Hey kids, we're a couple of annoyed grunt boys, and this is the 138th Simpsons podcast. That's right, we're the podcast that explores the American animated sitcom The Simpsons from seasons 11 and beyond, and the newest ones when they're available. Why do we do it like this? Well, an entity known as the Wheel of Random has trapped us and forced us to watch episodes in such a manner, and we know that there are already a ton of other podcasts that explore The Simpsons' golden age, that being seasons 1 through 10. I say we because I am one annoyed grunt boy named Steve, and with me, as always, is the other annoyed grunt boy,
Professor Craig.
Hello, Professor Craig. How are we doing this week?
We're doing great. It's the end of season 35. I thought, what if we just start calling ourselves like Professor Craig, and then you could be like Dr. Steve? So we sound like more official. That way, like when people see this description of the podcast, they'll be like, oh, these guys are intellects. There's a professor and a doctor.
I love this idea. Yeah, from here on out, I will be Dr. Steve. This sounds good.
All right, I'll be Professor Craig, and we'll keep bringing that up throughout the episode, right?
Oh, yeah, we will not forget it, and can be consistent for the next, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. We have a lot to talk about.
We do. So I don't think we should do any wacky banter or any bits. I think we just get into it because we're going to be wrapping up season 35 at the end of this episode that we talk about.
Yeah, so stick around for that. But in the meantime, let's explore what was happening when this episode originally aired May 19th, 2024. Craig, what was the number one movie in the box office?
It's the family-friendly version of Stephen King's It. If. So now there's a movie called It, and now If. Can we do Of? Anne? We could do Anne.
In.
It would be good. You know, they make porn parodies, so I bet If's porn parody is called In.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about a kid's, like, wet dreams coming to life.
Isn't that just It?
Oh, yeah. Comedian Sarah Sherman, like, her wet dream is Pennywise the Clown. That's her hall pass. That's her celebrity crush. We're not an SNL podcast, Steve. This is the Office Ladies' Best Friends movie. John Krasinski directed and wrote this episode.
Oh, true, yes. Yeah.
Starring the worst actor from The Office, Steve Carell.
Of course.
Glad he left.
Yeah. Really, show really was freed up once he was gone, and it really got a chance to shine and explore that lovely relationship between Jim and Pam.
This is a movie I think, Ryan Reynolds is going to have a big summer this year. If this is already the number one movie, we know the next number one movie will be Deadpool 3. So I think Ryan Reynolds isn't going anywhere.
Finally, it's time to shine.
But this is a movie, like, when it comes on streamers, I might watch it.
Yeah, it seems like a good, Saturday afternoon, I don't know what to watch movie, or just, a good airplane movie.
Yeah, it's like, I took an edible this afternoon. You know what? I just want to sit down and watch something silly. This might be it. And you'll probably end up, bawling, crying.
Right.
It's like, it's the weed. It is definitely the weed. Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
What's all this music that we're listening to? Like your hot songs of alternative or country or dance and your basic Billboard Hot 100.
Well, Craig, I know we're a little pressed for time because we've got so much to go through. But first of all, on the top of the Billboard Hot 100, I'm sorry to Taylor Swift and to Drake because the number one song is Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar.
So Kendrick Lamar won the rap feud between Drake and himself.
I do believe, yes. I have not been following the whole beef closely, but seems like Kendrick Lamar is the more talented of the two and not a creep, and also wasn't on Degrassi.
Take that.
Yes.
Do you really want actress Anna Kendrick and basketball player Lamar Odom and Kendrick Lamar to be in a throuple so they could be Anna Kendrick Lamar Odom?
Oh, I do now. Yeah, that sounds great.
And you're welcome, Jeopardy, for taking that as a clue, by the way.
Oh, yeah, before and after and after. It's great.
Yeah.
So just to rush through it, number one Hot 100 on the alternative charts is once again Too Sweet by Hosier. Once again, we have a bar song Tipsy by Shabuzi.
I hope that's going to win Song of the Year in 2024. That's what I'm hoping for.
I hope so, just because I like saying Shabuzi.
Exactly.
And then we have a new song because Houdini has disappeared. Sorry, Dua Lipa, because the number one Hot Dance Electric song on the Hot 100 is Miles on It by Marshmello and Kane Brown.
Like Miles on It, like a person named Miles, or is it like the distance?
Truly, I don't know. It could be a tribute to Miles Davis.
Well, I'd love to play the song, Steve, but like you said, we are strapped for time.
All right, so let's just get into it. Today we're talking about Season 35, Episode 18, Bart's Brain, and this will take some time to explain the plot. So here we go. Deep breath in. Bart makes a new friend.
Good job, Steve.
Thank you. It was tough. But what will not be tough is watching this episode with y'all, so let's do that. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back. We're back. Today we're talking about Bart's Brain, the 18th and final episode of the 35th season. It originally aired on May 19th, 2024. It is episode 768 in the show's run. Your nerd code is 35ABF12. It was written by Dan Vebber, directed by Michael Polcino, and your showrunners are Matt Selman, Michael Price, and Al G.
Wow, we haven't had a Dan Vebber episode since season 35, episode 5, the Treehouse of Horror 34. It's nice to hear from good old Dan Vebber.
Yeah.
We still have 3 of his episodes that we haven't reviewed yet. This is the 12th, and we reviewed 9, so that's how I did the math, Steve. 12 minus 9 is 3.
I gotta get my accountant on the line, but I'm gonna say that I think you might be right.
Why do you need an accountant?
Because there's, my taxes and my other businesses, and, yeah.
You should just use our mathematician that we have on retainer.
He just has an abacus, and he's not very good.
And also a chimpanzee.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to chimp shame, but...
Remember when we used to chimp shame, but then 9/11 happened, and we had to get behind our president, George W. Bush?
Oh, not a political podcast, but that's some biting political commentary right there. He did look like a monkey.
Hey, I could just the insults on both sides of the aisle, Steve. How about that Howard Dean? Whew, how is his career over?
Man, he got excited and rightfully disqualified from the office of presidency.
We haven't heard from him because I think he's in Guantanamo Bay now because of that.
That seems appropriate, yeah.
But yeah, Dan Vebber, look, the ones that we've reviewed, Lisa the Veterinarian, Frink Gets Testy, Thanksgiving of Horror, which is a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Starfighter. Of course, all these are great episodes, right? Boys in the Highlands, Stepbrother from the Same Planet, McMansion and Wife, and Treehouse of Horror. I guess he started at the top of the season, and then now he's ending the season.
Much like our good friend Drake. He started from the bottom, and now he's here.
As you know, in the intro, you just listened to Drake No More. It's all about the Kendrick Lamar, right?
That's right.
Okay, well, hey, Dan Vebber, we all know him from other shows like Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, Futurama, Daria, Napoleon Dynamite, the anime series, American Dad, and of course, a couple episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or was it just that one? I know it's the Zeppo, I think it's called.
Imagine us in the 90s to have that career, imagine somebody who's like a writer on The Simpsons, Space Ghost, Futurama, Daria, and Buffy, that's the coolest person ever.
Yeah, I just imagine us sitting around wearing our cargo short khaki pants. I got my puka shell necklace on.
Double polo.
Our hair parted down the middle with maybe some bleach tips, and rock out on our anti-skip CD Discmans. Hell yeah, we had that kind of money.
With rechargeable batteries.
We like the Dan Vebber on this podcast, so let's see if we'll still like him after this week's episode, right, Steve?
Indeed, and our episode begins, as it always does, at the Springfield Retirement Castle, where Grandpa is checking out the latest issue of High Pants Time, where he finds a pair of trousers that would diaper up real nice, which is perfect for the former and hopefully future president wasting time in a courtroom.
And Steve's not taking sides from either out because they're both old men who probably wear diapers.
This is true, yeah. These are choices.
Until we get rid of the age limit of age 35 is the youngest you can be a president, and then it could be any age, and then America can do the smart thing and actually elect a baby as a president.
President Baby, I mean, he knows what's right, and he's wearing a diaper for the right reasons.
That sounds political. For the right reasons.
That's right. I want a conservative baby.
You want a fiscally sound, baby. You don't want it spending money on things it doesn't need.
No, I mean, it promised candy and...
Babies don't need roads. They don't need a public education yet. So, a conservative baby is a good idea.
And that way, when its tie is too long, it makes sense because it's just a little baby.
And it will be voiced by the voice of the liberals. That's right, Alec Baldwin, our hero.
Right, the boss baby himself. So other articles in the High Pants Time article, or in the magazine, include Geezer of the Year contest and how to make cream corn less tangy. Abe's reading time is interrupted by Homer, who says that he has some good news.
Dad, we've got wonderful news.
It's a gift we've been hoping to give you for years.
You're finally off the wait list. A better room opened up. Hot diggity! Not diggity! This room is tiny. How's it better? Better for us. It's cheaper.
Much cheaper.
Wouldn't you rather we spend that money on your grandkids' education? No! They're dumb as dirt.
Look on the bright side. You're right next to the ice machine. And the pill machine. And how about this beautiful view they painted on the cinder block wall?
It's too bright! And what about all my stuff? You'll just have to get rid of some of it. And once you're used to this smaller space, it'll ease your transition to a cozy pine box. Pine, you promised me black walnut.
Steve, as someone who's worked in hospitality, and, for us travelers out there, the room you don't want is the one by the ice machine or the elevator.
It's true. A lot of foot traffic, a lot of noise, and the said errant ice cube, that falls out at 3 a.m. Also, as somebody who's okay with room temperature beverages, I don't know why ice machines are so important to people.
I know there's podcasters out there that refer to themselves as somewhat of a heat seeker. At times I do as well, but I'm actually a ice seeker, Steve.
Oh,
I love a cold ice water. I can't stand room temperature water. In fact, I get visibly upset.
Wow.
I remember there was one time I went to dinner. I got a glass of water, and I wasn't I didn't order I don't think I had a cocktail or anything. It was just a glass of water, and it ruined my whole meal. I wanted ice water, but I had lukewarm tap water at some restaurant. That wasn't a dive bar or anything. That wasn't also a Michelin restaurant. They ruined my whole meal. Why can't I just get some ice with this? I didn't ask. They probably would have.
Yeah.
But it seems so weird just here's some room temp water. Enjoy your meal.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm not opposed to ice water. Ice water is delightful. But it's really not that big of a deal to me. But I don't know. Maybe I think it's because, growing up, my dad was very... I guess he was probably born before ice was a thing. So we just always had room temperature beverages, and he liked his beer room temperature. And when I drank a lot of beer, I also was kind of for the most part, if I drink a lot, especially darker beers, I didn't need it to be ice cold.
I thought they would you were drinking beer with your dad as a little kid, and he was drinking it warm, so I was drinking it warm with him.
I mean, I see what I don't see the problem with your premise, but okay.
Well, look, and I know it's kind of purely an American thing. Over in Europe, you definitely just get room temperature water.
Right. They
don't give you ice water. Ice water is a big thing in America. So it's just my American ignorance and just my taste. But,
no, I mean, I get it. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm fine with a dark beer like that as well, but not if it's a Bud Light or Coors Light. I need that ice cold.
Yeah, if I'm drinking a lager or anything Golden or even an IPA, you want that to be frosty and cold.
Yeah. I hate to side with the adults in the room, and not grandpa, because old people are just feeble babies. But
sure,
there's a point in your life when like you just have too much stuff. So it just seems better to just downsize and keep downsizing, right? Because when he does die, that's so much less for Marge and Homer to like clean out of his tiny 12 by 12 closet room.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's hard enough to get rid of your own stuff, but let alone somebody who's passed on or isn't available to speak for themselves, because you're not sure what you should keep and what you shouldn't keep. And it's just kind of a pain. And yeah, so I agree.
That's why in my will I put everything I have goes to you, Steve. So then you got to deal with it.
Well, everything that I have will also go to probably my cat.
Actually, it'd be funny just to like find some random person in the phone book, write their name down, give it to your lawyer, and then like, find out about that person. Like, okay. And then they just are burdened with all of your junk.
Yeah.
That sounds like a premise to like a really bad Pauly Shore movie.
Mm-hmm.
And as his agent, I'm going to submit that. Okay, cool. Hey, let's go back to The Simpsons. Homer vows to give his father only the best, giving him a big hug and kiss while shaking his head at Marge. So later, Bart and Lisa help Abe go through his things, and Lisa asks if a shoe tree brings him joy, like the Maria Kondo. Remember how popular that was in 2020, Steve?
2019, I looked it up. It's like, that's a reference that's kind of old.
All right.
Not the first one that we'll talk about.
All right. Because I have a time period theory about this episode. So.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. And Grandpa says that it just the shoe tree makes him furious. So he's keeping it. And Bart looks through Abe's old army chest and finds all his old war stuff. So including a helmet with a bullet hole in it, much like Abe would have worn when he was a flying hellfish. And Bart asks to keep it. And Grandpa is touched to know that his precious memories are going to someone who will cherish them. Once again, Abe gets a hug from a family member that is accompanied by a shake of the head. Very fun little two jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the flying hellfish now, with like the time period, that they were the flying hellfish in the second Iraq war or the first one? The first one, probably.
Yeah, probably the first one. I did think, I guess, I don't know. It's a weird thing because as we watch Simpsons, the time, we've talked about it a lot, how the time changes and like the timeline shifts. So I get that they wouldn't reference the flying hellfish or Abe being, the whole episode where Abe and Bart bond over Abe one time being a hero. But it's just kind of weird that they don't make any reference to it at all.
I'm thinking about the time period. I think he probably would have been Vietnam then.
Yeah, that tracks.
Because if we're Homer's age, and then our dad, my dad would have been in Vietnam, even though he didn't go, he was hanging with his friend Donald T, we'll say. No, that's too obvious. D. Trump.
Of course.
They both got a deferment, so he didn't go. Yeah, hey.
So Bart heads over to Herman's Military Antiques, looking to see how much money he can get for all of Grandpa's crap. Herman notes that most of the medals are for cowardice, including a star badge depicting two hands raised in surrender. He then grabs a hand grenade from Abe's locker and spins it to see if it still works. He pulls a pin, and as he spins it, he counts to 4 and realizes that it's a dud. All the same, he offers Bart $100 in store credit, with the exception of switchblades and cyanide pills, which Bart reluctantly accepts.
So he's walking through the aisles past the leaky canteens, 10% off, military smocks, and camouflage underpants. But I didn't see those underpants, Steve, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like John Cena was wearing them.
Bart can't quite seem to find what he's looking for. He then sees a collection of comic books about VD and wonders why he wouldn't want to catch Valentine's Day. So he looks at titles such as Keep Your Privates Private, Private.
True Tales of Blazing Pee-Holes.
When Johnny Comes Scratching Home.
And The Misadventures of Spirochete. And as we all know, a spirochete is the spiral bacteria that causes syphilis. We don't all know that. Not from experience, but one could assume that a doctor would tell you or somebody else that it's pronounced spirochete. Yeah.
Oh, I thought a spirochete was a pet bird.
Well, it they both have worms, and
you could get spirochete from a pet bird if you're like a British bloke, right? They call ladies birds.
Yeah,
okay,
like Mick Jagger, because he got 2 birds with 1 stone. I only had a threesome.
I think there's like a new strand of syphilis just based off of Mick Jagger, right?
I think so, yeah.
Well, Bart then looks up and discovers something that leaves him awestruck. He says, "Oh my God, are you there? It's me, Margaret." As he hears the angelic choir sing, Bart sees on the top of a shelf a human brain in a jar. As Herman reaches and grabs it, Bart declares that his life so far has been merely a prelude. Today, a prank king becomes a prank god. He yells, "I want to buy your brain." And then we hear a very cool heavy metal type version of the Simpsons theme song. The cloudy sky goes from a bright blue to dreary gray as the text "Bart's brain" appears on the screen, and Bart skates out of Herman's military antiques, brain jar in hand. And so he goes through the nuclear power plant. The sight of the brain causes Burns and Smithers to pass out. This is all, just the Simpsons intro. And then, all newly animated is fun. So he places the jar in Homer's hazmat suit and reappears in the grocery store as Marge and Maggie check out the checkout stand. And then Bart laughs as Maggie balances the brain jar on her head.
So in Mr. Largo's music class, Bart shows off the brain to Lisa and the other aspiring musicians, who all fall back in horror. While driving, Homer pulls the brain jar out of the back of his shirt and is so freaked out he swerves, hitting Otto, and then rolls the car several times. The jar flies into the air just in time for Bart to catch it and continues to skate through Springfield, frightening everyone he passes by. The rest of the Simpson family arrive at the couch only to find the brain jar sitting in the middle, and they all run away in terror. And then Bart pops up from behind the sofa and laughs at his successful prank.
So we just described the theme song intro, but with new things on it. So you're welcome, podcast listeners.
Yeah, you're welcome. You don't need to watch the episode now, or at least not that 40 seconds of it.
Do you think that they should have just got rid of The Simpsons, in the very beginning? I know to establish that this is the beginning of the episode, but they should have just started with a whole cold open, starting, at the retirement home, then to the Herman's antique store, store. And then you got this, the Bart's brain segment with the couch gag included, and then after that, then you start rolling the credits, not the post credits, but the pre credits. Is that what you call them?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think they could have also told the story in a different manner. Where you're right, they could have had to begin at Herman's, and he gets the brain, and then maybe it rewinds, and somebody asks how did you get the brain, and then he tells about at the retirement castle.
Yeah. It's fun to think of what could have been, Steve.
Indeed.
Just to make some sort of big episode for a season finale, which, in production order-wise, it's not meant to be a season finale.
Right.
And they never really do big things, but, I feel like they should.
Mm-hmm.
Bring back big season finale moments. I mean, shoot Mr. Burns every season finale.
Yeah, have somebody die every season finale.
Or get shot, and then we have to figure out who gets shot. I want to pitch that. They should do Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 2, Part 3. No, Part 2, Part 2. No, it'll be Part 3, Part 2. There you go. And just someone else, he gets shot. There you go. All right. Pitch it to Caesar or Brody, those writers.
Mm-hmm.
They're close to our age. Okay. Hey, let's go to Springfield Elementary, where the sign reads that it's like homeschooling, but at school. Another interesting tidbit about this year I have a theory about. So in the cafeteria, Principal Skinner and Super Nintendo Chalmers show Comptroller Atkins that their new funding has been put to good use, redoing the cafeteria floor and ceiling, and they're offering new, exciting menu options. So the panoply of nutrition includes split pea soup, clam chowder, both varieties. Sorry, Rhode Island, we don't count you. What's Rhode Island clam chowder?
New England clam chowder is cream-based, Manhattan clam chowder is tomato-based, and Rhode Island clam chowder, as Bill Oakley recently discovered on his Instagram, because he needs our promotions, it's broth-based. I think it's usually a fish broth. So if the concept of clam chowder wasn't gross enough for you, what if it was brothy? Which actually, I don't know. That doesn't sound as bad. I don't know. I'm just not a clam chowder fan myself.
But you sure are a chowder head.
Oh, pronounce it right, Frenchie. Chowder.
What would Oregon clam chowder be?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like it would have... Well, first of all, they'd throw some salmon in there.
Sure.
And then...
And we have plenty of clams on the Oregon coast.
That's true. But we're so, proud of our salmon.
True.
We'd also probably put Marion berries in it. We love Marion berries.
Hazelnuts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, maybe a donut, because we also have a weird thing about donuts.
And there are a lot of vegan restaurants in Portland, so let's make this all vegan.
Yeah. So a vegan clam chowder sounds delightful with some Marion berries, vegan salmon, hazelnuts, and a donut. Yum.
And we are the beaver state, so you know what I'm getting at, Steve.
Oh, yeah. Do you enjoy eating beaver?
A clammy-based beaver.
Sounds like DJ Khaled's worst nightmare.
Throw some hot ones on that, and it's definitely his worst nightmare. Okay, hey, Steve. Hey, let's go to Bart's table, okay?
All right, so Milhouse asks him if he's really going to do it. And Bart assures Milhouse, Nelson, and Martin that he is, in fact, the Bartman, and taps his beloved brain jar that is sitting in his backpack. Nelson excitedly comments that it's happening, while Skinner shows Comptroller Atkins the venison chili, the beef bourguignon, and the vibrant Indian curry. Bart then shows off his brain under glass, which causes all the students to gasp and then gag.
Do you like seeing Comptroller Atkins? Because I still feel like he's going to take his face off and it's going to be Otto.
Face? Oh. Yes, I do. It's cool to see him. I like to see the extended school board administrators. Like, it's funny because at this point, Chalmers is commonplace to see because he's at Springfield Elementary almost every day now. So it is cool to see that his boss and Skinner's boss's boss is there kind of keeping an eye on things.
Doesn't he usually wear a sash that says Comptroller?
I do believe, yes.
No.
It might be a casual Friday.
Okay. Well, as the Hurley Gates vomit cleanup crew arrives to get rid of the puke mess, Bart receives reprimand from Principal Skinner's office. And Seymour tells Bart that he did far more damage than just ruining some administrator's suits. We then see Skinner and Chalmers in clothes they found in the Lost and Found. But Seymour tells Bart that he is the one that is truly lost. He traumatized scores of students, rendered the cafeteria uninhabitable for weeks, and worst of all, he broke Willie. So we see the groundskeeper riding his tractor in the buff in a circle, muttering to himself about chunks. So the school officials then ask Bart if he has anything to say before doling out his punishment.
What do you have to say for yourself?
I regret nothing. I'll gladly accept whatever book you throw at me because there's no way I could ever live with myself if I hadn't done this today. So give me all the Fs, send me to juvie, or even kill me because I'm already immortal. And when I do die...
Oh, shut up. 4 weeks detention and you're not going on the trip to Colonial Shelbyville.
You will be confined to the detention trailer while other students delight in learning how bricks were once made.
Principal Skinner, if I may, I believe we can deal with Bart's behavior in a more constructive way. Turn this into a learning opportunity.
It's not a learning opportunity. It's a punishing opportunity. The boy should suffer. He brought a human brain to school.
Exactly. And I think he should bring it to school every day. Learn to take care of it, journal his experience, gain a sense of
responsibility.
No, please don't do this. I'm begging you.
Pale skin, sweaty lip, twitchy eye. Now that's suffering. Miss Peyton, make it so.
Do you think anyone is allowed to use that term, make it so, without anyone invoking Captain Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation?
I don't think so, because that's all I heard. And, I'm not even the biggest Trekkie, but, when I see Make It So, I think of Picard.
Yeah, you couldn't have a TV show now and have a character say that without someone not did you just Picard me?
Mm-hmm.
I could see Chalmers being a Trekkie. He probably cosplays as Picard. He's bald like Picard and has the hair on the side.
I could see him being a big Trekkie, yeah.
Agnes dresses up as, Deanna Troi, and they start, fooling around, right?
And Seymour reveal as Wesley is great.
Yes. Okay, well, it should be Picard and Dr. Crusher. Not
yeah, I
Picard.
guess so, but...
Or it would be funnier is if Skinner is Commander Riker and and Agnes is Deanna Troi, because Commander Riker and Troi on TNG were the love, the item.
That's true. I could also see Skinner being a mean Tasha Yar.
Or Worf.
Yeah.
Hey, we said last week Miss Peyton was going to come back, Kerry Washington, so it's great. You know what's great about this that I just thought about the second time around watching it was if this was an episode with the same plot in the first couple seasons, Bart would have been punished.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how Skinner and Chalmers are that old school mentality of even when we were kids, you did something wrong, then of course you're going to be punished for it. But now I think the opposite is what's being taught in schools. And like Miss Payton is the example of that, that, well, Bart clearly is trying to say something. So let's see what I can do to make that a positive thing. And so her turning this negative thing that they see into a positive thing. I think it's an interesting way of bringing the Simpsons into the 21st century and like child rearing, you know, and like how it's a lot different than when we were kids.
Yeah, and I think it's because like of the collective trauma that Gen X and millennials experienced through punishment. It's the reason why we don't see punishment as often is because we realize like, oh, that's just kind of horrible and doesn't work. So we've, maybe adjusted to that. So we're more like Miss Payton where, we try and listen and try and like be more supportive. And I know that some people might say, oh, we're like, pandering to children or like coddling them. But it seems like, showing compassion in general is a good thing. So we should probably do it.
Yeah. And like when you're at your like work job, like, are you ever going to be punished the way a child is?
Right.
I mean, well, if you do something bad, you get fired, obviously.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you do a screw up at work, like, as long as it's like, doesn't kill anybody, or I'm assuming.
Right.
Well, I guess if you lose a lot of money for the company, that's not good. Or start embezzling. But, if you send like the wrong medication to the wrong person, I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah. I recently had an experience at my new job where it wasn't me, but
Sure. It was let's call him Eve. Yeah, that's the ticket.
Yeah. Attractive bald guy with glasses. Yeah. But there was a mistake made, and somebody even said, like, nobody's in trouble. We just want to prevent this from happening in the future. Nobody did anything wrong. And then they're like, well, somebody did something wrong, but it doesn't matter who. And yeah, and it is funny because, yeah, things happen. I did want to say in that clip, I noticed that Skinner and Chalmers are wearing outfits from the Lost and Found. Skinner in his Springfield Elementary shirt and gym shorts, and Chalmers weirdly wearing a gold chain and then like a surf shirt and some red shorts. And I was like, oh, that seems very reminiscent of something. And then I remembered that, it was in Pulp Fiction when, Jules and Vincent had to like change their clothes because they shot
Mr. Burns.
No, they shot a Futurama character. What was his name?
Professor Frink.
No, the black guy, because that's his voice.
Philip J. Fry? Oh, Hermes.
Hermes, because that's, Phil Lamar, who also was shot.
Phil Lamar, yeah.
Who was shot in the head, and that's why they had to change it in the first place. Anyway, I thought it was cool that Miss Payton is wearing the Pulp Fiction shirt to show that they are referencing Pulp Fiction.
What was that line that Tarantino was saying in Pulp Fiction that you really liked to repeat when we were in high school, like about his house and like storage? What was it called? You used to repeat it all the time in school.
I think it was actually about the coffee and about how he drinks a good coffee and not any of the words that are around that scene.
Yeah. I just remember something else, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
It might have been that other guy, Eve.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, hateful person, that Eve.
What's funny is like I didn't get that connection. I was like, why is she wearing a Pulp Fiction shirt? So it was kind of like telling the audience, like, remember that scene in Pulp Fiction? Which I didn't get. I just thought it was how, if you wore an inappropriate T-shirt at school, you either had to like turn it inside out or like take it off and they'd give you something else to wear.
Yeah, or like maybe put a piece of tape on it.
Yeah. Did that ever happen to you? Because I might have said it on the podcast, but that happened to me like in middle school. I had a shirt that I think I just wore it inside out. I didn't want to show my little boy boobies.
Of course. I don't think I ever had a shirt that had any controversy with, but I do remember a friend of mine had a shirt that depicted an alien smoking a blunt. And he convinced the teachers that he wasn't smoking a blunt. It was a slice of pie in his hand. Because the way that the smoke billowed up, if you made the right angle, it kind of looked like a triangle, thereby kind of looking like a piece of pie. It took some like abstract thinking, but yeah.
And that friend went on to be Stephen Hawking, because that's how brilliant he was.
That's right. Even Hawking.
Even Hawking. Sorry, even Hawking. Mine was because I know like when we were in like middle school, the Big Johnson, that was a big brand that shirts, but we knew those were kind of lame. I didn't wear that. Instead, I went to Spencer's and I got a Calvin Klein parody shirt because Calvin Klein was really popular back then, right?
Indeed.
CK. And so I got, because the C in the K said Calvin Klein, right? Mine, my CK said Richard Cranium. And I thought it was very clever, because it meant dickhead, you see.
Yeah.
And then remember I had to get that shirt to turn inside out.
And throughout the years, you've always supported anything to do with CK, be it Calvin Klein, Louis, whatever.
Absolutely. Hey, so as Skinner and Chalmers laugh at Bart, Miss Peyton hands him his brain in a jar along with his new journal. Bart's greatest prank has now become homework. In Miss Peyton's classroom, the other students receive a similar fate, having to care and protect for a fragile, helpless egg. Bart remarks that he doesn't want to lug the brain everywhere he goes. He had his fun for 5 minutes, and now he's ready to move on with his life. So Miss Peyton responds that is what parenthood is all about.
Nelson wonders if his egg is even his own before leaving to get candy cigarettes, promising his little Ova that he'll be right back. A nice little thing about his dad. Miss Peyton tells the class to keep the caregiver journal up to date, as that is what they'll be graded on. Bart feels that using a human brain for homework is the stupidest thing that he ever heard, when his own brain reminds him that he can help Bart study. But Bart just threatens his brain that if he doesn't shut up, he'll go back to sniffing permanent markers.
So Bart then goes on about his life, and now as a parent of a brain in a jar. So on the kickball field, it turns to run, but grabbing the jar makes it easy for Wendell to tag him out before he can make it to first base. Later, Bart struggles to store the brain jar in his locker and even tote it around while the other kids carry their eggs with ease. And then on the school bus, Bart runs to grab the jar as it rolls down the aisle, and the bus goes up and down hills. And so back at home, Bart tries to enjoy some TV time, but Lisa worries that his viewing choice may not be appropriate for his brain in the jar.
Hey, Bart, do you really think Itchy and Scratchy is appropriate for a developing mind?
That's not a baby. It's a glop of gunk in a jar of goo.
Your baby journal's pretty empty. Are you sure this isn't your second fake kid?
Oh, this sucks. I need some me time. I'm going to Millhouses to watch reaction videos to reaction videos.
Your teacher wouldn't like you leaving your baby all alone unless you get a sitter.
Last minute? I'll never find someone on such short notice. Unless... Dad, would you watch your grandson tonight?
No, I told you to get rid of it, remember?
Oh, come on, please. I need some me time.
Well, I guess I could give it the same love and attention I gave you when you were a baby.
I'm sorry, Homer. I'm not accepting organs as payment anymore.
Nah, it's just my kid's brain.
They grow up so fast.
So in that clip, Homer's eating a bowl of Count Cavity cereal, parody of Count Chocula, obviously, which we first saw in season 33's Pretty Little Liar, the episode with Lurleen, or not Lurleen, but Mrs. Stuckler, which we discussed back in March of 2020. And this is the first of several cereal boxes that we see that are jokes and that were callbacks to other episodes.
If you go down the cereal aisle, it's not too far off of what's being offered right now.
It's wild to go down the cereal aisle because, yeah, there are so many varieties of cereals that are...
Cheerios, for one.
Yeah, there's a ton of different varieties of Cheerios. And then there's just, like, weird products that aren't cereal that are now cereal. Like, obviously, Oreos have been around for a while. But they'll have, like, just other products like Flamin' Hot Cheerios or...
Well, I've seen, like, Swedish fish cereal.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
the thing.
Sour Patch Kids cereal is a thing.
Raisin Bran. What is this,
Yeah, those are two things that are not cereal. That's raisins and that's bran, but that's not cereal.
But I don't know if we've discussed this on the podcast, because I'm pretty sure it's come up. It just seems like it's come up before in The Simpsons. But the egg thing, taking care of an egg.
Yeah.
And with your kid, that I don't think I ever did that.
Me neither, and it feels like such a sitcom trope that is one of those things where I learned about it from TV and I just assumed it was real. And then, when I became a teenager and then an adult, it never really happened. So I don't know if it's ever actually been a thing.
The only thing I would think we did with eggs was we had to create like a parachute and something that encompassed the egg in like a science class to drop it off of a balcony to make sure it didn't break. That was the only thing that we had to do with an egg, but that was like one class period.
Right, and that was more about science and not about parenting, unless you're Michael Jackson.
That was our parenting class. He was like, "Yeah, this is how we hold babies over ledges." Am I allowed to do a Michael Jackson voice, by the way?
I don't know, but
I know I can't.
I will say it's the best Michael Jackson impression I've heard in probably the past 10 years.
Should I just like redo all of the lines from Stark Raving Dad, and they could put that episode back up on Disney Plus?
Yeah, I think that's the issue. Yeah,
All right.
Yeah, you'll be good. So Barney walks into Moe's, announcing that he just found out that he's the next in line for a new liver. So Lenny, Carl, and Homer, who has Bart's brain in a baby carrier on the bar, they all cheer. Homer suggests that they give Barney his old liver one last night he'll never forget. So they all chant out, "One last night," as Moe starts to pour the duff.
So then over at the Van Houten household, Bart and Milhouse are playing a fighting game, with Bart playing as Alberto and Milhouse, of course, as Thrillho.
Should be.
No, he's Millman 76. So the blood flies, and Bart gives Milhouse's character an atomic wedgie and then throws him to the ground, causing a mushroom cloud to emit from his asshole. Bart comments how good it feels to get out of the house and away from his stupid, needy brain.
So Milhouse, sitting next to his egg, Lil House, who sits comfortably in an egg cup, Milhouse says that he enjoys being a dad. He can fix mistakes that his parents made. He then loses the match and yells, telling the egg that it's his fault that he's a failure. And then in the game, there's a bonus humiliation, which is a defilement. As a brain is pulled out of a player's body by the brainstem, Bart is reminded of his own little guy. Not that he cares or anything. Luann then comes in, offering the boys a healthy snack of roasted cauliflower. Bart takes one look and sees how it resembles a brain. So he decides to go home, which leaves more roasty collies for Milhouse. Cauliflower had a moment a few years back of being like a vegetarian substitute, like you roast cauliflower and it could be like buffalo wings or whatever. And as somebody who has experimented with vegetarianism from time to time and is like very open to trying veggie food, that is one thing that I'm not buying it. Like the cauliflower trend never like really worked for me.
Yeah, I'm not a big cauli head, even though like broccoli is my favorite vegetable.
Yeah, broccoli's great. Cauliflower, not so much.
No. But you know what the weird thing is? I used to have Super Bowl parties, and for a couple years, there'd be only like one vegetarian that showed up. And so I would still I'd make wings, but then I'd do like a roasted cauliflower buffalo wing. But everyone ate the cauliflower buffalo over the actual chicken, like including the non-vegetarians. So I ended up at leftovers with chicken wings, but the cauliflower always was eaten. So then like next year I had to make more, and still it was always eaten. So I don't know. Maybe it's just because it was like not as messy. You didn't have to deal with bones.
I mean, it could just be a testament to your good cooking. Like maybe you're such a good cook that you, I don't know.
It's the same sauce. You know, I'm making the same buffalo sauce for both the wings and the cauliflower. So it's nothing, different there. So I don't know. So I've always had to do the roasted cauliflower, which then I actually will eat. So it's not bad. Buffalo cauliflower.
Okay. Maybe but I should revisit it then.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the living room of 742 Evergreen Terrace, Bart paces back and forth, wondering where Homer is with his brain jar. He hears the car door open, and then Homer stumbles inside, and Bart calls his father a good-for-nothing. But Homer tells him to relax, Marge, because, he's drunk. Mm-hmm. He's assuring him that the baby is fine. So Bart runs to the car seat, lifts the blanket, only to find his sweet little precious jar of pickled eggs. Yeah, Bart throws the jar of the snacks and asks Homer where the brain is. And Homer drunkenly admits that he must have mixed up the two jars when he was making them kiss. So Bart fears that the brain is too young for kissing before leaving to go find it. So at the tavern, Moe looks through the vault of passed out Barney when Bart bursts in looking for answers.
What happened to that brain my dad had?
Well, years of drinking, not to mention all that nuclear stuff, and I don't think it was all that great to begin with.
The one in the jar.
Oh, that? Oh, I left that in the alley for the raccoons. They'll eat tonight.
No! Huh? Nicotine beef jerky? I know who took you!
I'm so jerked up. I feel like I smoked a whole cow. Let's mess up this brain.
Leave it alone! That's That's my brain!
After we blow it up, you can have the biggest chunk.
This isn't some frog where you can put a firecracker in its butt. It's a living thing, and it's my job to take care of it and teach it to do cool stuff like, paintball and pooping in jack-o'-lanterns. So hands off my brain!
Craig, did you poop in a lot of jack-o'-lanterns?
No, I just jacked it in a lot of jack-o'-lanterns because that's what they're for, right?
Yeah, that's why they're called that. That's why they have the holes.
Makes for great, special effects when you see the eyes and mouth, oozing something out.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when there's, black lights out. So, never mind. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, I assume that the candle they put in there is like a little game. Like, if you can get the candle out, you win.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a prank Bart pulls on All Hallows Eve. Just goes to neighbor's house or maybe just Flanders' house and shits in their jack-o'-lanterns. Although, do the Flanders put out jack-o'-lanterns?
Seems like they wouldn't. I mean, seems a little pagan and, satanic a little bit.
But most of the Christian holidays are just stolen pagan holidays, right?
It's true. I did love in the beginning of that clip the joke about Homer's brain and Bart coming in what did you do with Homer's brain? And Mo was like, well, years of alcoholism and the nuclear stuff. And it wasn't that good to begin with. It's a good joke.
It's an old vaudeville joke, yeah.
Yeah.
That was great.
So the bullies relent and give Bart back his brain, or as Jimbo puts it, his stupid head cheese. So as Bart skates off, brain in hand, Kearney puts out his firecracker and wonders if anyone will love him the way that Bart loves the brain. Bart vows to take care of his one and only brain and says, "You need a name, bud." So he lands on the name Buddy, since the brain is in fact his buddy, and that he doesn't want to think about it any longer.
I think he should have named it Brian.
The fact that there were no Brian brain jokes is kind of a disappointment.
In his treehouse, Bart is writing in his journal, and he says, Buddy the brain sitting on a pillow next to him. He tells the tale of his adventure, and then he has a self-discovery that his brain isn't a dumb prank or homework assignment. He's a badass, just like Bart. And I want to point out something here. When he writes in the journal, he writes Thursday, May 14th.
Ooh,
so
okay, here we
I'm
go.
doing some math here, Steve, and this is kind of alluding here. The last May 14th, that was a Thursday, would have been in the year 2020. The next will be in the year 2026. So are we in the future or the past? Now, I feel that we're in the year 2020, and I have some theories on why we are. And this also theory could pinpoint which state Springfield is in.
Whoa.
Lisa throws out a reference, like a Maria Kondo reference. That was so 2020. Because everyone during the pandemic was watching that.
Yeah.
Then it got me thinking, well, he also has school. This is May 2020. Most schools were doing Zoom classes, and there's that beginning at Springfield Elementary where it says it's like homeschooling, but at school, because we kind of were doing homeschooling by this time. Now, there was also certain states that didn't abide by those rules, right?
Right.
So would this been a school state that wasn't during the COVID lockdown time?
Oh.
Or they weren't doing it in May? Also, maybe some stores were going in lockdown, but what kind of store wouldn't be listening to the government?
Military supply store.
Exactly. No mask to be seen. And then there's also another thing that happens later in this episode that it will agree with the timeline of being 2020. So just keep that in mind. Does this episode take place in the year 2020?
Wow.
All right. Well, let's go to a clip here. It's the following evening. The family dines at Luigi's restaurant, which is like DoorDash, but in a restaurant.
Garçon, another high chair for my associate here.
You brought your jar, friend.
Oh, I get it. Buddy's a little different, but he's my responsibility. Plus, he's pretty cool.
Well, maybe he could be under the table.
Whoa, Buddy's my +1. Would you rather me bring Millhouse?
No. No one said Millhouse.
Simpsons are welcome. Oh, my favorite family. A Homer, a Marge, a Lisa, a Maggie, a Bart, a Brain, a Brain! Michelangelo, defende nos proerio, presidio.
It's okay. It's just a school project.
Good news. A table should just open up in our private dining room. You can go into...
Everybody in Springfield is horrified by a brain in a jar. And I don't know if I'm a weirdo. And I know it's the whole concept of the plot, but is it really that gross?
Like, if it was a whole skinless human being, being trotted around.
Yeah, I feel like and he like treated it like a ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah. Like, you know, I've been to those exhibitions where it's they've taken volunteer bodies and shown like the circulatory system and then like the musculature of a human body. It's like an actual human body. It was kind of creepy, but I was like, I'm here for like the science of it. But still, yeah, the brain isn't, you know, I've seen brains in jars.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like everybody in Springfield's reaction might be a little bit over the top.
But I like how Luigi greets the Simpsons and knows them by name. That's nice. That's really good customer service.
That is, yeah.
Is Luigi's a good restaurant or bad? Because it seems to be like everyone makes fun of it. They still go there.
Yeah, it's interesting because it stays busy, and even bad Italian food is still pretty good.
Right.
You know, Woody Allen said something about pizza and sex and said some other good things too.
And done some good things.
Sure, yeah. But, you know, like, so even like mediocre, you know, pizza or whatever, it's going to be all right. So I think people probably enjoy Luigi's a lot.
All right.
So the Simpsons are moved inside the walk-in cooler, and Lisa complains that her pasta is cold, and Marge says that, you know, everything's cold. Bart happily draws a smiley face on the jar using condensation, and later that evening, in bed, Marge tells Homer that his brain business won't be good for Bart in the long run. Homer feels that Bart is capable of doing far worse things, and that he has done worse stuff. Marge is concerned. Bart's named the brain, and he even gave it a bite of tiramisu. Marge is worried that Bart will become the town weirdo, and Homer feels that weirdos aren't what they once were, because they now start computer companies or own the Las Vegas Raiders when, you know, they began playing in Vegas in 2020.
So this lines up.
Yeah. Or, you know, they become serial killers. But still, Bart's odds for at least 2 out of 3. And if it were me, I don't know sports, so maybe this joke isn't funny, but like, you know, he says that, you know, the rule of 3, so they'll either become they'll either start a computer company, own the Raiders, or become serial killers. And Homer's like, you know, the odds are at least 2 out of 3. And I would have added that, like, the odds are 2 out of 3 that he doesn't own the Raiders. So the joke is that owning the Raiders is worse than being a serial killer.
Yeah, like if he's like, please not the Raiders, please not the Raiders.
Exactly. I don't know. That's my own funny joke.
And there's probably a rule in the NFL that 2 family members can't own competing teams, right? Because, you know, Homer owns the Broncos. His son probably could.
That's true. Yeah. Seems like a conflict of interest.
Yeah, then like down the line, if Bart owns the Raiders and Homer owns the Broncos, then, I don't know, one's going to be roasted and then and Nikki Glazer's really going to take him down.
Oh, yeah. And their children.
Yeah. Oh, the owner of the Raiders just kissed the owner of the Broncos on the lips. Hey, so Marge is worried that the children label each other and Bart is in danger of becoming the brain boy. So Homer assures his wife that she worries too much. And he reminds her that she thought Lisa was going to hell when she became a vegetarian. But Marge says she still feels that way.
So in the classroom, Miss Peyton praises students for their hard work on their egg projects. She finds the parenting journals to be really inspired. And then she hands Bart his journal, which has received an A+. And Bart's in disbelief. He's never received an A+ before, and he thought that they were only for suckwads like Barton, who just happens to be in earshot. With the assignment complete, Miss Peyton asked for the eggs back, but Bart isn't quite ready to give up his child just yet.
Okay, everybody, you did a great job, so it's time to turn in your eggs.
Whoa, hold on there. I am not giving you Buddy.
Well, one of the hardest parts of parenting is watching your child move on.
Debbie Willie's breakfast.
Your brain can have a home on a shelf in the school science lab.
Ugh, Buddy hates science. He's like me. He's into Meat Canyon videos and doing wrestling moves on the dog and pouring Red Bull on pancakes.
Bart, it might be healthy for you to take a break from Buddy.
And it might be healthy for you to have your own kid and not live through us.
I never should have told you that we were trying.
Don't you worry, it'll work out.
It's only been 3 months. Give it time.
Kerry Washington's as Miss Peyton, her delivery of crying, and that was really well done. That actually gave me a nice LOL.
Yeah, it was fun.
A very, very much well-delivered Simpsons line. That's such a Simpsons joke. I'm a little, like, on the fence, though, with Miss Peyton. Like, Bart purchased that brain. You know, yes, it was store credit, but still, that's his brain. he shouldn't be giving that back. That's his.
Yeah, it's his property.
But then on the other side is like, he doesn't really need it. And the idea of that it should be in the school's like science lab, for like kids to check out for fun or like learning about the brain, it makes more sense because it's more useful there.
She's like Indiana Jones. She's like, it belongs in a museum. Yeah, I think it's a complex issue, but I don't know. I think I'm on Bart's side because, well, it is a little weird that he has a brain. I think at the end of the day, it is his property.
Yeah, that's, I think, the side I'm going with as well. It sucks when, like, you're a kid and you have something that's, like, is taken away from you for, like, a reason of, like, well, it's better for you not to have it, But you were gifted something and you bought something, it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, you have so little as a child that you can, like, call your own. Like, you have your toys or whatever, but, like, when you have something that is uniquely your own and to have it taken away, that sucks. So yeah. But at the Try and Save grocery store, Homer delights in the pleasures of wifeless shopping. All the meats are nuggets, and the produce section doesn't exist. He then arrives at the candy aisle, formerly known as cereal. Aside from the aforementioned Count Cavity, there are such morning treats as
Twizzlers Instant Oatmeal,
Snap, Crackle, and Pop Rocks,
Sugar Frosted Cakes,
Itchy and Stabios,
Frosted Mini Clowns,
Raisin Flan,
Gummy Bears, and a cereal box with 2 X's.
Honey Bunches of Nerd Rope,
Buffalo Wild Wings Sprite Glazed Hot Flakes,
Slightly Grosser Breck's Candy Corn Fudge,
Circle O's,
Asbestos,
Bran Chex,
Budget O's,
Eclairio's Cereal.
And some of those are references to other episodes like Asbestos and Fruit-Free Fruities, which were both also in Pretty Little Liars. Circle O's were from Todd Why House Thou Forsaken Me, Budget O's from Mobile Homer, Brain Checks from The Winter of His Content, and Eclairio's from Sweet and Sour Mark.
Now, which one are you going for?
Oh boy, I think Honey Bunches of Nerd Rope, because Nerd Rope and Nerd's Rope Bites are a top tier snack to me. I think they're great. But what about you?
I mean, I think the obvious would be gummy bears in a cereal box, just because there's gummy bears. So that it's not legal for me to start eating them with milk. I'm just going to eat them, and I like a giant box of gummy bears. Just give me that.
That does sound good.
I've got to say, Twizzlers Instant Oatmeal kind of reminds me of, there was an oatmeal when we were kids where you like drizzled like strawberry, like very sugary strawberry syrup or like a cherry syrup thing like over the oatmeal, and it kind of just tastes like the like crappy plasticky strawberry flavor, and that's what Twizzlers is. So I can see that actually working. The Twizzlers melty, but I'm sorry, I gotta try the Buffalo Wild Wings Sprite Glazed Hot Flakes. I just want to know what that tastes like.
I thought that was the one that you would go with because it does seem to be up your alley.
Yeah.
I will say that there was, in the 80s and early 90s, a Canadian gummy bear cereal, which I think was more cereal-based, but it was kind of inspired probably by Haribo or something. Mm. And I think there was also, speaking of Twizzlers Instant Oatmeal, I think also in the 90s there was another oatmeal that had, like, surprise gummy bears that, like, you didn't see them at first, but then like, as you ate, they appeared. So yeah, I think that's reasonable.
I mean, yeah, we had a lot of like sugar crappy cereals when we were kids, but it just seems like now, like we already mentioned, it's just too much.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Twizzlers, this is a very divisive argument, but are you Team Twizzler or Team Red Vine?
Well, Red Vine all the way.
Okay, yeah, me too. I'm actually a black licorice fan, which I know is also a very controversial take, but going to the movies, if I'm getting snacks at the movies with my wife, we always get popcorn, Red Vines, and a soda, just because that is the classic mix for us.
I'll have you know, Steve, as a licorice fan, and we've probably talked about it on the podcast before, but I was at the coast a while back, and there's an ice cream shop in one of the coastal towns that sells black licorice ice cream, and of course, I got it. Well, it's not black, it's just licorice ice cream, because it's actually white, so your mind gets weird, but it's good.
Sure.
It's good. You could tell it's very popular because all the ice cream at the shop was like down, like low. The licorice one was still pretty high up, and not many people will purchase it. But me, I know what I'm getting.
That sounds delicious. I love it.
They had a lemon ice cream, and I was contemplating 1 scoop of lemon and 1 scoop of licorice, but that might clash the flavors.
Yeah, that's a little bit.
Testing the waters too much. All right, hey, Steve, let's go to a clip, okay? Homer explores his breakfast option.
I don't care if he is Milhouse's best friend. He's just weird. And not the kind with a diagnosis that we have to like now.
My JJ says that he talks to the brain when no one's looking.
My little Seymour says the kids all call him Brain Boy behind his back.
I wonder who they're talking about. Mole Man?
Well, whatever they're calling him, I don't want Bart Simpson around my son.
No surprise to me that Bart Simpson has become a weirdo. When I had him in second grade, he ate a booger.
I hear Bart shares his bed with that brain. Puts a little sleep mask on it.
It's my fault, girls. I should have noogied him more, knuckled some sense into him. He had potential, but I guess he's just the town freak now. Ha ha.
I love Nelson just walking up to parent and teacher as if, like, they're peers. And he's just like, hey, I shouldn't have done something.
Well, and he was doing the grocery shopping because his mom's probably at work. Mm-hmm. Nelson has a lot of responsibilities in the house.
He does, yeah.
His dad probably said, you're going to be the man of the house once I go pick up this pack of cigarettes. So, there's the...
Yeah, he's doing pretty good, actually. I mean, he's got a grocery cart full of food, so he's doing pretty well.
Everyone's talking about how Bart's the weird kid. I also like Luann saying, like, oh, that was one of those, like, diagnoses that we have to be cool about.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess when you were talking about how, like, the whole town's, like, grossed out or weirded out by Bart, I guess it would be kind of weird behavior if you had a small town where everyone knew each other and now all of a sudden, like, some kid is just carrying around a brain in a jar and, like, treating it like his own. It is kind of weird now. I'm thinking about it.
I guess so, yeah.
Well, let's go to the kitchen where Marge hums a tune to herself as she pulls out a steaming watermelon from the dishwasher and then places in the fridge. I was a little thrown back by that scene. Like, is that just her cleaning a watermelon? Like, that's her...
Yeah, I looked at the Reddit just to see, like, if there was any thought about that. And, like, people were very confused. Some were assuming that it was, in fact, to sanitize the watermelon, which is kind of where my brain went.
Yeah.
Other people were assuming that it was to make the silverware smell better.
What?
But in a dishwasher, that doesn't really make any sense because, one, it's still encased. I don't know. It's just, I appreciate the fact that it's a non sequitur joke that is for nothing. Like, it doesn't pay off anything else. It's just there. So, yeah.
Yeah, and watermelon would take up, like, a lot of real estate in a dishwasher.
It's true. Big one, too.
Yeah, it was huge watermelon. Homer runs into the room out of breath with an open box of Honey Bunches of Nerds rope, and he tells Marge that she was right and that everyone is calling Bart Brain Boy. It's already started with Yentas, and it won't be long before it spreads to the slaggards. Marge comments that this is the whole rest of the town. She worries that Bart is lost and that he won't be known by his name but his thing, like Comic Book Guy or Crazy Cat Lady or Professor Pocket Pool, who then walks by the Simpsons household in a cap and gown, happily fondling himself, which is a very funny joke. It's just very funny.
Yeah. I haven't heard the term pocket pool since probably 7th grade.
Last time I heard it was 2020.
Oh. Was it a symptom of COVID? Like,
yeah.
You just start masturbating. Homer says that at least Professor Pocket Pool has tenure, but Bart, he'll be unemployable. So Lisa offers a suggestion to the Bart situation, but Homer is stunned. It calls her Little Miss Know-It-All. Unfazed, Lisa talks about a nature documentary that she just watched that may prove to be helpful.
When a chimp starts acting strangely, if it doesn't stop the behavior, the tribe will savagely attack it, leaving it scarred and isolated forever.
I know it. We need to protect my special little chimp from the cruel people in this town who would shun him.
Yes, we must be the loving parents who keep him locked up.
Open the door quietly.
You know how squeaky it is?
I told you to oil it.
I'm not an architect.
Your stage whispers are too loud.
Where are you guys going?
Bart, we're going to church.
Why didn't you wake me up?
You hate church. The itchy pants, the big book of stuff that never happened.
We thought maybe you'd like to skip it this week as a reward for being so normal.
This is about Buddy, isn't it? You're ashamed to be seen with me.
Of course not.
Why would we be ashamed of our son and his BFF, a jar of human remains?
I mean, Bart, you can get out of church. Just take this as a win.
Yeah, I think anytime you can not go to church, you're doing something right.
I mean, it's been 42 years since I've never been to church, so I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good.
Well, Marge invites Bart to make himself some Red Bull pancakes, put on some cartoons, and before he knows it, the family will be back from church. Family then runs out of the house and to the First Church of Springfield. As the marquee points out, it's like online church, but at church. Another thing that was going on during COVID time was church online.
True. The internet and church, a good combo. Inside, Reverend Lovejoy shares a sermon about livestock. Homer finds it to be quite boring, but he finally gets some peace from that brain boy. Marge, she agrees reluctantly and adds that her jaw is unclenched for the first time in weeks. So her mouth then droops open, but reclenches as Bart walks into the house of worship, greeting everybody and saying that he's going to sit with his loving family.
Did you get, not creeped out, but, that's kind of creepy. Marge's, mouth, drooped down.
Oh, yeah. Super weird.
Unsettling.
Yeah, it was just odd because it was so open and just, it was very disturbing. Lou the cop whispers that Brain Boy is here, while Hans Moleman calls Buddy gross and wrinkled. Bernice Hibbard shields the eyes of her son, JJ, as Ralph calls Bart troubled while chewing on a Bible. Bart then speaks up, inquiring what topics are being covered.
So, what episode of Jesus are we on today? Is he still talking about not judging people? Loving your brother? Or your son?
Bart, stop it! This is enough!
Yeah, this isn't just some little quirk like wearing a fedora or being a libertarian. You got a disgusting brain in a greasy jar.
My family. You're the ones who always said you'd love me no matter what. Unconditionally.
This was an unforeseen condition. Oh, wait, I didn't mean that.
Too late, Mom. Yes, I have a brain in a jar. So what? Sideshow Mel has a human bone in his hair, and nobody talks about that.
For your information, weirdo, this is the femur of a kangaroo. It was given to me by Yahoo Serious.
Go ahead, laugh and point at me. Call me Brain Boy. I don't care. I have a friend who will never judge me, who's always been there for me. This brain.
It's interesting the take that Marge and Homer are having with Bart here. They say you're supposed to just love your child and everything about them, whatever they want to express, love them for that. And it's interesting that these parents become hypocrites when something that they think is normal, and they're the ones who are wrong. Is the Bart's brain metaphor for something else, Steve?
Could be. I mean, we've seen in the past where Marge is supposedly open-minded, like with her sister, and then when it comes to reality, she's a little less comfortable. Actually, in a way, Marge, more so than Homer, although they're both a little, set in their ways where they might be closed-minded to something, maybe, a brain or sexuality.
Right.
Or who knows?
But you and I both agree that love your child no matter what.
Yeah.
Except, of course, if they are a vegetarian, they will be going to hell.
Right. And unlike Marge, if my child were a libertarian, we'd have some issues.
I guess if my kid was wearing a fedora, I'd probably have a talk. Have the talk.
Yeah.
Because like, son, you're going to get so much P-word.
Punches.
A kangaroo's femur is typically around 11 inches, Steve. So that probably tracks for Mel's bone in his head.
Okay.
So it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, that sounds like 5.5 of something else of mine.
You just had to go there, Steve. No one cares about the size of your hand.
I know. It's a little small, but I'm okay with it. I've got a huge penis.
I also like in the background, you see, this is just a Craig theory, that you see Barney in the background. He's nice and cleaned up. It's church, and you dress nice wearing your church clothes. But I also think, he looks good, so he probably got that transplant. So the operation was probably a success. Yeah,
and he probably doesn't want to, dip into his new liver just yet.
He's probably waiting till church so he can drink the blood of Christ. That's what he's waiting for.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Bart goes on to say that the brain gets him because they are one and the same badasses who don't play by society's rules. They are the Bart men. So as he holds up his best pal, a sticker falls off, revealing another label. It shows that the brain belongs to Mona Simpson.
Wow.
And then the episode ends. And the series is over. And that's the final shot of The Simpsons.
Wow.
But in,
Deep, you think?
but in reality, it's someone named Corbin Burtson. Nope, Corbin Everly. And that was donated to Springfield University on June 23rd, 1975. Bart wonders aloud who Corbin Everly was. And after a quick Google or Bing search, Lisa learns that Mr. Everly was a local tax accountant who donated his body to science, hoping it could benefit the world after his passing.
So Bart looks at Lisa's phone and sees a photo of Corbin winning an accounting award. He's stunned to learn that Bart is nothing like him. He's not some rude, crude, pranking dude with a freaky, fresh tood. He's just some guy named Corbin. And yeah, you're right. I also thought Corbin Burtson because that's the only Corbin I know. Bart learns that maybe it wasn't the best idea to slosh the brain all over town. And then his family sees his pain.
I feel bad for Bart.
No boy wants his brain to turn out to be a nerd.
Mom, I don't think I want to be the brain boy anymore.
Oh, sweetie. I'm sorry we weren't more supportive during this phase. You hear that? It was just a phase.
So as See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth plays, Bart places Buddy on a skateboard and pushes it down the road, allowing it to take on one path while he takes another. The brain jar lands at Springfield U, where Professor Frink finds it and recognizes the brain immediately. He asks where his old chum has been and hopes they never fight again, hugging the jar. In the distance, Bart calls Frink a weirdo, and the episode is dedicated to Buddy, and the credits begin to roll. And that's how one of the Fast and Furious, the one that Paul Walker died in. Or he didn't die, his character is fine, but the man Paul Walker died. R.I.P. I haven't seen that movie yet because I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's number 7, and it came out in 2013.
Okay. So I still have some time.
Yeah.
It's over 10 years old now? Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It was weird.
I'm getting around to it. I'm going to get around to it, okay?
You'll get there as soon as you finish The Wire.
Now that the June 23rd, 1975 comes up, now I'm wondering how old Frink is.
Yeah. I had the exact same thought. However, I gave it a little bit more time, and then I realized that perhaps, just perhaps, Professor Frink isn't friends with Corbin. He pulled a Bart and was friends with the brain, and Frink had some sort of falling out, to which he donated the brain to Henry's Military Antiques. And that's how it ended up there. That's what I'm thinking, because you're right. Otherwise, Frink would be a very old man if he were in college, either as student or professor in the 70s. That would make him, in his probably, 60s now. So yeah, I think that the brain is what Frink recognized, not that it was Corbin Everly.
Okay, I like that theory. Because you're right, even if he was a student, he still would be kind of old.
Right. And I would assume that he's probably, probably in his 30s or 40s.
Yeah, like everyone in Springfield is either like 8 to 10 or 30 to 45, minus the old people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's like only 3 different ages of people.
Yeah. And Flanders...
Either child, adult, or old.
And Flanders is a senior because he's in his 60s. So there you go. Yep.
Yeah. There you go.
The age 40 to 60 doesn't exist in Springfield.
Right, exactly. And I feel like as a millennial, it also doesn't exist because you're just like an adult for a little while and then you're just like, this is dumb. I'm just going to be a man-child and just live like that. Talk about a cartoon every day, every week for several hours. We then get a post-credit scene at the local community center. Marge drags Bart to a support group for eccentric children. We have one kid with a boa constrictor, another kid on stilts, and yet another is a goth. And even Kearney's kid is there, knitting a very long scarf. And so they see the collection of unique personalities, and Marge suggests that she and Bart just go away and get some ice cream, and then they back away. And then Bart, no, you're not Bart, you're Craig. Craig,
what?
You noticed something.
What, I did?
Maybe a sound effect.
Oh, yeah. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, and Steve's brought this up. There's this weird, zippy sound that it's always when Marge is around. It goes like this. And I think Steve's, associated with, a fart at times. And I'm like, it's not a fart.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of this conversation that we've had has been on the podcast, but has been edited out of the podcast because it just doesn't make sense when we talk about it.
Sure.
It's not a door closing. It's like, is it Marge? Is it a creaky floor? But it's always associated with Marge.
I just don't know what it is.
If everyone else hears this, just let us know. We want to know what your theory is. So email us at 13simpsons@gmail.com or give us a call through our voicemail, through the show's notes, or let us know on Instagram at 13simpsons.
That's our episode. I mean, not our episode, but the episode of The Simpsons that we just watched. Let's say we take a break, think about what we just saw, and we'll be right back.
Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
Alrighty, Craig, let's finish up our discussion of Bart's brain. We'll talk about the scenes that we liked, the scenes we didn't like, what we thought of the episode and our most valuable jokester, and even, it's the end of the season, what we thought of this season. And before we do all of that, let's talk about gifts, because gifts are always good to give, no matter the time of the year, and no matter what year it is, be it 2024 or 2020. So, Craig, I got you a couple things. First of all, I got you a bag of puff jerky, teriyaki-flavored tobacco jerky, because you never know when the mood might strike you where you want something to accompany your tomacco. So you've got some nice tobacco-flavored beef jerky, and it'll taste like you smoked a whole cow. And then I also got you switchblades and cyanide pills, the two things that you can't get with a Herman's Military Antique store credit. And, you never know when cyanide pills and switchblades may come in handy.
I appreciate that. I'll be using these pills shortly.
Hopefully in my drink.
Well, Steve, it's the end of the season, and I got you a gift, but I also got a gift for our listeners. Listeners, I need you to grab a writing utensil or open your notes app up on your device, because I'm going to give you the gift of a recipe. And, Steve, I actually made them for you. Here's a plate.
Oh.
I made Red Bull pancakes.
Oh, boy.
And here's the recipe. So you write this down. 1 large egg, 1 cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. Then you need 3 tablespoons of oil, olive oil, vegetable oil is fine too. Any oil will work. Motor oil, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
3 teaspoons of baking powder, not soda, powder. And then like a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then half of a can of a regular 8-ounce can of Red Bull. Use half of that. Hold that to the side. All those other greens I just said, mix them together. Then add a half a can of Red Bull and then mix. And then you pour it onto a griddle and flip like you would do for pancakes. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you do with that other half can of Red Bull? You can either drink it or make a syrup out of it. And all you would do with the syrup is pour the can into a pan, throw some butter in there, just kind of get it warm, thicken it up. You can put a little sugar in it if you want. And there's your syrup. And then bon appetit. So there you go.
Wow.
Red Bull pancakes, a la Bart.
Great gift. Very novel idea. And I think it's funny because it works, but I don't want it to because it also sounds disgusting, but I also think it would work.
Right. Make them and post them on your social media and tag us. And we want to see you eat those pancakes.
Yeah, we want to see your flapjacks. Alrighty, Craig. So what in this episode made you laugh?
Like scene-wise, I really liked the Bart and his brain with the Simpsons intro. It's fun to do that kind of a parody again. The Pulp Fiction shirt scene made me enjoy it more when you explained that it was a parody of Pulp Fiction. And I also liked how Mrs. Peyton forcing Bart into like learning from his mistakes. I think that was great. I also like her line delivery of wanting to have a child when they tease her for not having kids. That's really funny to me. Nelson was particularly pretty good in this episode too. He had a lot of fun lines, especially with his egg and then with the ladies in the grocery store. And the vaudevillian line that Moe had about when Bart asked Moe about his dad's brain. And the shade Marge throws at Lisa for being a vegetarian. And I might have gotten a little teared up with the end of the scene with the Fast and Furious Wiz Khalifa music in the background. The song always brings a tear to my eye, right?
Very emotional.
If I had to give it to the MVJ, Nelson, might get MVJs every once in a while, but, it is season 35. I doubt Miss Peyton's going to get a lot of MVJs, so I'm just going to throw Miss Peyton with that line delivery of crying and not able to conceive a child. That's very funny to me. So congratulations, Kerry Washington. Hopefully now you'll be able to come onto our show because I gave you this award.
Oh, very nice.
How about you, Steve?
All the serial parodies were fun. I like the running gag of the church, the homeschooling, and the restaurant. It's like DoorDash, but it's a restaurant. It's like church, or it's like online church, but it's in a church, and it's like homeschool, but in school. Like, really good joke, especially when you added that this probably took place in 2020, adds an extra layer to that, which I like. The Pulp Fiction joke, I think, is probably my favorite joke. I'm going to give Mo the MVJ. I know it's a dumb vaudevillian type joke, but the whole brain thing, it made me laugh the most out of this episode. But I did like Kerry Washington's performance. But what did you think of this episode as a whole?
You know, when I watched it originally, I didn't have that many chuckles, and I just kind of almost poo-pooed this episode. Usually it takes a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
But on second watch, I enjoyed it a lot more. I had some issues with it. I don't know if it's like top tier, essentially. It's not bottom tier. It's in the mid for me, but I like some of the things that they're attempting to do in bringing the modernization of like child rearing. Like, you know, I liked how Bart learned from this. With all those like clues taking place in 2020, I'm wondering, this episode might have been better if this took place during an actual lockdown. Was this written as like Bart was in lockdown, and during lockdown, he's just doing the homeschool Zoom schools, and kids at that time, you know, are locked in the house. They can't see their friends. So what if, you know, the one store that was open during lockdown was Herman's, and he bought that brain, and because he's not seeing any of his friends or connecting to humans besides the ones that live in this house, that he develops this relationship with the brain in the jar because of the loneliness that he's having as a child because of lockdown. So I think there's an episode there with the same idea, but more about how COVID affected kids that we don't know about. We won't know as adults because this never happened to us as a kid. So there's kids now that their whole world's totally has a different view because of this lockdown that we had a couple of years ago. So I think that's kind of maybe where the episode was written from. But because now they're like, well, let's polish off Dan Vebber's old script and just incorporate a new story element to it because it has potential, and maybe they didn't want to have that kind of a big subject for a cartoon. So I enjoyed it, and then, you know, in my mind, I'm writing something different, but not bad. You know, if I had to give this a ranking, look, Bart's got a human brain, and we know that a human head weighs 8 pounds thanks to Jonathan Lipnicki from the movie Jerry Maguire, right? So I'm on the Rotten Tomatoes scores of Jonathan Lipnicki films. His highest tomato meter score from the reviews is Jerry Maguire. It's 84%. The lowest he has is 0% for The Love of the Money, which came out in 2012. Never heard of this movie, but it's got some great people like Edward Furlong, James Caan, Jeffrey Tambor. So out of those movies, obviously that being the lowest, Jerry Maguire being the highest, I'm going to give this episode a pitching tense, which has 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, with another great cast such as Jonathan Lipnicki and Richard Reel, character actor Richard Reel. Right. If you looked him up, you would know who I was talking about. How about you, Steve?
I also had some issues with this episode. Upon first viewing, the egg parenting kind of felt tropey. As I mentioned in the episode, people's reactions to the brain was a little weird to me, like the kids all vomiting because they saw a brain in a jar. I felt like was an overreaction. And initially, I didn't like this episode at all. I thought it was like a low point in the season. However, upon the second and third viewing, my mindset, my brain, if you will, kind of changed because I did kind of think about how emotionally weird it would be for a child to be like attached at the hip to a brain, and the way that Bart acted was a little weird. And then when you bring the element of it being in the height of the COVID pandemic, 2 months into lockdown, when schools are starting to change and the world's starting to change, and for a child that has to be a frightening thing that we, like you said, don't know the effects of, that might change things. I think that the loneliness a child might feel and being able to have like somebody to talk to about his fears would be very powerful. I think that there are elements of this episode that are very good. I think that Harry Washington and Miss Peyton's character treating it like an assignment rather than punishment, interesting. I like that Bart still holding on to being that classic Bartman bad dude with the rude attitude, and then like faulting on that and realizing that, you know, people aren't like that anymore because it's not 1992 anymore. That's kind of powerful. However, I think that it was an ambitious thing that they tried because it's just an A story, no B plot. And simultaneously, I think trying to be emotionally wrenching with the song and just Bart feeling lonely, but also it doesn't quite get there, I feel like. But it was a fun time. I'm a little torn. So I think that it's, I don't even want to say it's a miss. I think it's a weak hit. Like, it's a good, okay episode. So if I had to give it a ranking, you mentioned that the human head weighs 8 pounds thanks to Jerry Maguire, but the human brain itself weighs about 3 pounds or about 1,300 grams. So I'm going to say out of 1,300 grams, I'm going to give this, I'm going to say 1150.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a middle of the road episode as well. I mean, I guess I'm, if I were to go back to and you know, talk about Jonathan Lipnicki movie that people might remember, it's probably more like a little vampire. It's not like Mike or Stuart Little,
sure,
but maybe a little vampire.
That's fair. I do have to say that this is not only the end of, you know, this episode, but it's the end of the season, end of season 35.
And who knows, maybe this podcast.
It's very possible.
I mean, just because one of us might die. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. But I think, you know, it should be a good moment to take a look back and maybe talk about a couple episodes for us that really worked from the season and maybe a couple that didn't work so well. So like almost like a compliment sandwich that they use in the business world these days, because much like school's not wanting to punish, in the business world, you don't always want to be so harsh and direct about talking about people's flaws. So you say a thing that works, a thing that doesn't work so well, and a thing that, once again, does work. So it's like a compliment sandwich. So, Craig, for season 35, what are maybe 2 things that worked and 1 that didn't so much for you?
Well, I'm going to go with an episode that was all the way back to our 250th episode, Steve.
Whoa.
That was season 35's episode 6, Iron Marge. When Marge's heart is broken by a bad birthday present, Bart and Lisa must dig in their mom's past to show that they really know her. So this episode, I really did enjoy because it was the kids being kids and not Lisa. We talked about in the episode, like how Lisa was actually being a kid because they were being selfish by getting that spy kit.
Mm-hmm.
Because kids always think of themselves and of their parents. And Marge just wanted like that robe. A great like Marge episode. You felt really bad for her. And there was like because it was the one with the PD, the parrot, remember, that they thought it was...
Right.
That's what she wanted. It was just a lot of fun, and I liked how the kids were kids in that. An episode that I wanted to love because of the cast, the guest cast that was in it, was I.E. Bonnie Romance. Look, it kind of gave us that mid-seasons, I'm not talking about like seasons 13 to like 17 of Simpsons, where like a lot of episodes they just did about the Spreeville characters because they didn't have ideas for, you know, the Simpsons family. And so that kind of was like an episode of a throwback. But they had Karen Gillan, who was great as Maisie, right? Willie's Romance. But there was David Tennant, who was a guest star, a guest voice on an episode, who had like 3 lines. And like, you have David Tennant, arguably like the most popular Doctor Who doctor, all around just like a fun actor to watch and to listen to. He's got a great Scottish accent. So he felt wasted in that episode. And just even like the story of like Bart like having to ruin Willie's wedding, which just seems so odd and out of place. And another like the Simpsons go to Scotland, or like a go-to place, like usually aren't great episodes that we figured out in that episode, I believe. So yeah, that episode just didn't have a lot of love from us. It was more like we were disappointed, but we're not mad.
Yeah, exactly. Just disappointed.
And then the next episode I gotta go with, we just watched from episode 14 of this year, and that was Night of the Living Wage. And that one was the one where Marge starts up the kitchen, and there was the Bear, the TV show The Bear parody. You had the great Jason Mantzoukas as a guest star. Such a fresh episode because I think it was a new writer, and that was Cesar Mazariegos. just hearing like new, fresh voices writing The Simpsons and giving it a new spin. It was just a well done episode. So there's my sandwich. I will give notoriety to Cremains of the Day, which was the episode that Larry, the barfly, passed away. Particularly, I think I liked that one. They did a great job of making you feel for a character that you didn't care about, which was written well, but also a lot of publicity because of that episode came out. Keeping The Simpsons in the zeitgeist is positive for this podcast. So kudos to that episode. And one more thing I'm going to say, the MVJ for the season, the most valuable character in this season, I'm going to say was Marge. There were so many Marge-centric episodes this season that I think we haven't got in a lot of seasons. They did Marge justice this season. Like, she got a lot to do. So Julie Cavalier, kudos to her, and kudos to the writers and the staff elevating the character who, a lot of times they didn't really write for Marge. So there you go. How about you, Steve?
Well, Craig, I completely agree with you that this is Marge's season. In fact, I'm going to start my sandwich with, as you mentioned, Night of the Living Wage. Aside from being a great episode of Marge and the Bear parody and Jason Mantzoukas, I also think it's a brutal examination of modern day capitalism and how it just sucks for everybody right now and how people are having to work so hard for so little. And I think it just evokes the stress that we're all living in. But also I think Gil as a villain is an interesting take. And I think that it's just a really good example of modern hellscape that we all experience in a fun way. For my lesser episode, the one that I think kind of missed a little bit, I'm going to go with the third episode of the season, episode 753, McMansion and Wife, which we talked about in our episode 247. This was an episode that I felt, conversely, tried so hard to evoke modern experiences and just kind of missed. It felt like a little out of touch. In this one, there's new neighbors and they're at first really kind, but then they realize that they're just trying to remodel the house and get the Simpsons to deconstruct their house. I felt like it was a little soft on jokes. The plot felt like of the moment and not really great. And then also I feel like you slaughtered Dick Van Dyke as a guest. When people talk about what's wrong with modern day Simpsons, this is a good example of what they're talking about, where it's so hard for them to capture youth culture or younger adult culture, and this is where they missed. The other one that really worked for me is once again a Marge episode, Clan of the Cave Mom, which was the one, which was the primal parody. It was actually the one right before Night of the Living Wage, episode 269 for us. Marge and Luann having a beef about parenting, and we go back and forth between modern day and prehistoric lifetimes, and I think the art direction is so good, and I think it's just such an artistically done episode that's really just beautiful, and there's violence, and there's just all kinds of great things. So I think what we both have discovered is that Marge is a fascinating character, and this season it's great to see them explore her as a person more and dive deeper into her as a three-dimensional being. And I also think, like you mentioned, that it's great to see newer writers kind of take on Marge and, the family as a whole and not use the same writers who we also love. Like, don't get me wrong, I do love, a Frank or a Dan Vebber or whoever. Like, I just think that having the diversity of new voices is also really interesting. And I think that what worked for us this season, and also kind of what didn't, is that fresh voices might be a fun way to go moving forward.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that you picked Night of the Living Wage, and so did I. I didn't put Clan of the Cave Mom because I thought you were going to do it, and you did.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think you put Night of the Living Wage, so it sounds like both of us review Night of the Living Wage as the best, but it's actually Clan of the Cave Mom is my favorite episode of the season, but I didn't want to put it down because I knew you would.
Right.
So I was going with the episodes like, he might not pick these three. But it's funny that, do we think Night of the Living Wage is... It's a great episode, but Clan of the Cave Mom, you're right. It is just one of the best episodes, if not the best episode of season 35. So
yeah,
I'll read it with that. But yeah, this is Marge's season. Whose season is season 36? I hope it's, I don't know. Let's go with Maggie. All Maggie, season 36.
Ooh, I like it. Suck indeed.
This season in general, though, did not suck. If I'm looking at all the 18 episodes we had here, we only had 3 that we both didn't really like. Only 3 episodes didn't make it for not liking it. But then where we were iffy or like different on, there was 6. So then the rest of them were all good. So there you go.
So like that means that like 2/3 of the episodes were positive for the most part. And I think that's a pretty good odds. And, this was probably a trying time for the writers with the strikes and all. This has been a good season on all. And I think it just further shows that the whole premise of this podcast is like to find the gold in the new episodes. And I think we're doing that. And we're finding that there are a lot of great episodes out there.
Right. And it's going to be fun to come back to season 36. And hopefully we'll get more than 18 episodes this season. Can't wait. We know we're going to at least 1,000 episodes. So,
yeah.
I mean, The Simpsons in general.
Wild. But sadly, Craig, next week we will not have a new episode. So that means that we have to call on our good friend, the Wheel of Random, who is our own little brain in a jar, because we love it so much. So let's give it a spin to see which season we're in. Ba-doop. Alrighty, we have season 31. Alrighty.
Baskin Robbins season.
So all those flavors. Let's give it one more spin to see which episode we're watching. Ba-doop. Alrighty, we have season 31, episode 18.
31-18. Steve, I don't really have a clue what season 31 episodes would be, because that wasn't that long ago, Steve. We're season 35 now? That was 4 years ago?
Yeah, we're talking, just a mere month or so after this episode may have taken place, because it's April 19th, 2020.
Wow. Okay. So this was Bart's brain. Maybe it was Lisa's spleen.
Oh. That does sound like a fascinating episode. However, that is not the one that we're going to be watching next week, because the title is The Incredible Likeness of Being a Baby. What do you think happens, Craig?
Well, it's probably a Maggie episode, because she's the only baby in this Springfield. So I think Maggie gets body shamed, which she shouldn't do. And so she decides to lose some weight. And so she takes baby Ozempic and she becomes very light. So that's why she's very light.
Wow.
And then the B story is Bart gets a brain from Herman's. It coincides with the episode we just watched.
Wow.
I don't think I saw Maggie. Did we see Maggie in a little bit in Bart's brain?
Not really, not at all. So yeah, that's very possible.
All right, I'm going to keep that in mind when we watch that. That's going on.
And the idea of baby Ozempic is quite depressing, and body shaming babies, because they're so cute with the roles. But the episode is about, so Marge won't let Maggie play with her new baby crush because of his annoying mother, leading Maggie into a depressive spiral. Meanwhile, Mr. Burns tasks Homer with swindling Cletus out of his helium fortune.
This is season 31, too, which had a couple of episodes that we liked. For instance, that's Thanksgiving of Horror.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Dan Vebber episode himself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious about this one. The B plot sounds like something that we might come up with, like Mr. Burns tasks Homer with swindling Cletus out of his helium fortune. That is such a fun word salad in the best way possible. And I wonder who Maggie's crush is. Is it going to be... It's not Gerald, because Gerald is her enemy, so I don't know who this baby is.
We're just going to be full of babies next week, Steve. That's the plan, right?
I think so.
I have another proposition real quick. When this episode aired, we should talk about what episode we were reviewing for the podcast that week.
I like that.
It'd be like a time travel in it'd be like Back to the Future 2. We're going back to us and seeing what we're talking about. That'll be an interesting introduction, Steve.
I like that. We'll check that out. And we hope you check us out next week and every week. And hey, if you want to reach out to us, you can contact us on the socials, like your Instagram, your Threads, or your YouTube at 13simpsons. Or you can always email us at 13simpsons@gmail.com.
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever podcast you listen to. Give us 5 stars or whatever the equivalent is of the most stars. But you don't have to write a real review. Just let us know what human organ you would carry around in a jar. And hey, check out our TeePublic site, tpublic.com/user/annoyedgruntboys for some merch. Oh, and another way to contact us, of course, is on the phone, which you just scroll through the show's notes to leave a voicemail. You just click it. It'll dial up. No one answers. You just leave a voicemail. We want to hear from you. And then, hey, thanks for sticking around for season 35. It was fun. You guys have a wonderful summer out there.
Yes, be cool. Stay cool. We'll see you next year. And actually next week. Thank you so much for listening, as always. I've been Annoyed Grunt Boy Steve.
And I've been Annoyed Grunt Boy Craig.
And remember, this was an unforeseen condition.
Oh, shut up. You're not going on the trip to Colonial Shelbyville.
I'm so jerked up.